Another episode of the Kam Johal Show. Today we're going solo and we're going to have you guys participate on the program. So it's a phone in. So the telephone number is on the screen, 0121 289 5000. And today we're talking about alcohol in the Asian community. So if you know me at all, it's a journey that I've been on and really talked about quite a lot. So and I continue to speak about it, and to the point where 1.5 million people have viewed my posts on LinkedIn, etc. And it's a very large problem from the feedback that I'm getting. So साडी community ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ damage ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਆ. So culturally we are exposed to this thing. And you know, studies have shown that men in our community are very susceptible to alcoholism, more so than white British men. So kyun problem hai na? It's a cultural thing. So aapa gharaं de vich baith ke, you know, we're drinking a lot of alcohol these days, and that abuse is going on all the time. So the good news is that we're finally getting men to talk about it. So what was happening previously was that there's a lot of feedback coming, and which was concerned people, so wives, sisters, mothers, fathers ringing up saying that, you know, the men folk in their household were abusing alcohol. But finally now, you know, I've had an awful lot of men come forward. So if you've got some concerns about yourself or some relatives, I'm happy to speak to you, take your calls. Or if you think that you know the symptoms of why it's happening and what we can do about it, because we're a solutions-based program. What we want to do is ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਈ solution ਹੈ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹ ਲੱਭਣੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ problem ਵਾਸਤੇ. Because what's happening is that we also enabling our younger men to drink, so these things carry on down the generation. So I spent an hour and a half with a gentleman this afternoon who was very concerned about his own situation with alcohol and didn't know where to turn. So he said, you know, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, because soon as you go to the religious side of any learning, all the scholars that are talking about alcohol are talking about it in an anecdotal manner. That means, you know, ਉਹ ਆਪ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਦੇ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ, so ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂਗਾ. So we've got an issue there. Then we've got something like Alcoholics Anonymous, and again my caller today said that he didn't feel that he could go there. And you know, and I totally understand that, because I felt that I couldn't go to those places. I was in business, I was running my own companies, and I didn't feel that I had the time or the people there would resonate with me. You know, AA does a superb job, but at the same time they ask you to go to meetings on a daily basis, and I simply didn't have the time or the inclination. So I'd love to hear from you if you are suffering from alcoholism, and or if you're concerned about it. I don't need your name. It's not a name and shame kind of situation, because the other thing that I'm getting from our community is that people are feeling that there's something wrong with them as a shameful thing, which is normal for what we do in our community. When there's something going on that, you know, people are not particularly talking about success, etc. in our community, we tend to brush it under the carpet. And that we can't do that any longer. We talked about mental illness quite often on this program. I'm not qualified, by the way. But we can't keep brushing these kind of things under the carpet. We need to discuss them as a community. And you know, KTV is a community-based TV station, and I'm a very big believer in the fact that, you know, the solutions are within us. ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ, ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ solution ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਣਾ. You know, nobody else can help us from a point of view that nobody understands our community the way we do. So we've got the expertise, we've got the doctors, we've got the qualified people, the therapists in our community that can help us understand what these problems are and go forward and deal with them. So, you know, the phone lines are open. Don't be embarrassed, please. I'd really like you to interact with me on this program today and tell me what is going on. And if you think you've got the answer, because we're really good at that, if you think you've got the answer to our alcohol problems as a community, then what are those? You know, what can we do to get rid and reduce this real issue in our community, whereby when we go to parties, when we're in the home, we've got our men folk huddled in corners and, you know, and drinking away in lounges at home. And, you know, it's a real concern, because what it's doing is it's breaking up families. It's causing financial hardship. So one of my group wrote that his father drank so much that there was no money left in the house for food. So, you know, and those of us that are professionals and successful don't have financial worries that are caused by alcohol, but of course, not everybody's in that position. So, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਆ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, you know, that money is money that you need for your family. So, Punjabi ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਲਵੋ, ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਚ ਕਰ ਲਵੋ, ਤੇ tell me what your thoughts are on this as a community. ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਹੈਲਪ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. ਸੋ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਫੈਕਟ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਸਾਰੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਫੈਕਟ ਆ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਵੀ ਬੰਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ you know ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦਾਰੂ ਆ, ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਆ, ਨਸ਼ਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ. ਸੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਖੁਦ 2-3 ਯਾਰ ਮਿੱਤਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਵੀ ਚਲੀ ਗਈ ਆ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ. I'm hearing more and more issues about long-term health, so sometimes which ends in the end of life, which is a really sad kind of place to be as a community of people, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈਲਪ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਆ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ, ਐਂਡ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਲਵ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ. So we can solve any of these issues as long as we are open and we discuss these matters in an open way. So what can be done about these situations? So my own experience is that there's a big stigma attached into being an alcoholic in our community, and an alcoholic itself is a term that is very loosely used. It's a term that you know, defines everybody that has the occasional situation where they may indulge too much, all the way down to somebody that's lost everything and sleeps on a park bench. So it's a very loose term and defines all sorts of people. So I don't think that it's best describes most people, because most people function quite ordinarily and well and are very successful. So again, my caller today was a very successful businessman, an entrepreneur, had his own business, and the family was very well to do from a financial point of view. So that wasn't their issue. The issue for him was, you know, exclusion from his family and future health issues, which are not the best when it comes to anything like this. So it goes all the way from various illnesses, various cancers, the risk of which is increased. Particularly, I read in women, in terms of breast cancer rates go very, very high when there's regular consumption of alcohol. Women's bodies handle alcohol in a different way to how men can handle it. But of course, you know, women tend to be smaller and, you know, don't have the absorption that a man's body, which is generally larger, has of alcohol. And so we do react differently to these two things. And so what is your experience? Do you have a person in your family that is abusing alcohol and is suffering? So the other thing is that we know very little about it, and we know a lot about it. So for my own experiences are that it often masks underlying issues with mental illnesses or earlier childhood experience, psychological issues. So it's used as a crutch very often to mask other problems, which of course, once the alcohol's gone, will still need addressing. So how do we do that? How do we go about these things? So as a community of people, we can come together and deal with those. So, you know, get your calls in, and the phone lines are open now, so I'd love to hear from you. Please don't sit and just watch, because this is your program and it's your TV station. And I'd love to have some participation from the audience. So every month or so, we open up the phone lines for you to be able to participate. So we're not talking about the traditional issues of, you know, the Punjab as we do on all the other programs. We're talking about something that's closer to home, and it's behind closed doors. One of the many issues with alcoholism and the abuse of alcohol is the increased domestic violence that goes on, again behind closed doors. So wives, partners, parents, children can be subjected to this. And again, it's a hidden problem that we do not talk about as a community of people. So when should we start talking about it? When are we going to bring these things, when are we going to shine the light on these issues? Because lots of things are coming out in modern society where people, women particularly, who have been sexually abused by various people are coming out. So only this week, a major celebrity has been jailed and found to be, having abused in over many, many years, using their position and their power to suppress all investigations and everything. So, but that doesn't happen in our community. Our community does these things behind closed doors. So why are we doing these things, and what are the things that we can do to actually alleviate these problems? So how can we start this situation, and how can we get rid of these? So I'd like to hear your views. A lot of issues in terms of starts from a very small problem which builds up over time. So again, my studies and my own experience are that it's not an immediate problem for most people. It builds over time as the years go on. Alcohol dependency increases, and from a very healthy relationship where people are not abusing alcohol, they are enjoying it, and many, many people do. I understand it's a problem in about 10% of the population generally, but in our own community it's a problem in a much higher proportion of our population. And again, I don't know what the reason for that is, why we're more likely to have an alcohol issue than white males in this country, but I'm sure we could discuss those things. So we have our first caller. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Is that Kam?
It is indeed.
Hi, Kam. My name is Saira, and I'm from Manchester.
Hello.
Are we live?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to congratulate you, Kam, on your journey, your progress so far in regards to quitting alcohol.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I've seen your post on LinkedIn, and I think it's really amazing how many people have commented and liked the post. I think there was something over 1 million views.
Indeed. With Sarah, we're at about 1.5 million views now of 2 posts, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So I wanted to say a big thank you to you, Kam, for the work that you do, to inspire the younger generation, to inspire entrepreneurs. And I think in our community, in the Asian community, alcohol is a major issue.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's affecting relationships, it's affecting people financially, it's affecting people's mental health, and it's just something that's growing and growing in our community, and it's destroying our community. And youngsters are involved in it. There's people from the older generation who are now trying to see that what kind of a problem it is. We've got other issues. There's obviously drugs, there's obesity, there's divorce, all these issues in our community. So thank you so much for the work that you do to address these issues and just raise awareness about it.
Thank you so much. Sarah, tell me something before you go. I understand that young Muslim men are increasingly drinking alcohol these days. Is that true?
That's right.
Devastating news, because I've done a lot of business in Manchester, have a lot of friends, and one of the things that all of my Muslim friends didn't do was drink alcohol. But I hear that's really on the increase, and younger Muslim men are now drinking alcohol quite openly. That's right, yeah. Well, you'll be surprised, a lot of Muslim women are doing it openly. Wow. I suppose it affects everybody, right? So
yeah.
So is the community itself concerned as to, because obviously, our religion, Sikhism, forbids alcohol, but not at a level, that Islam does.
Yes.
So is something being done about it? What are the concerns that you guys have?
The problem I see, Kam, is obviously I practice my religion, I don't drink alcohol, but what I see is not everybody is practicing their religion.
Mm-hmm.
So with the effect of social media, people are going away and away from religion. And a lot of these Muslim women and a lot of these Muslim men, what they're finding is they just want to, put a door to religion, close the door on it, and live their life the way that they want.
Mm.
But then what they find is their health is being affected. In the Muslim community, I'm sure you will be aware of, the divorce rates are going high, really high.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of single parents now, even single fathers that are looking after the children when the mothers have gone. So I just think it's because there's a lack of closeness to religion, because, like you said, Sikhism forbids alcohol, Islam does as well, and I'm sure Hinduism does as well. So
Yes.
I think when you're away from your religion, it's just all these things get onto you, and then a couple of years down the line is when people realise that it's affected their health, it's affected them financially, and then that's when it's a bit too late, unfortunately, for some people.
Indeed. And why do you think we don't discuss these issues?
Number one, I think it's a confidence thing. People don't like to talk about it in the open, that they've got a problem with drinking. Or and as well for women, if they talk about it openly, then they don't want to name and shame themselves, because obviously if you belong to the Muslim community, and even the women are doing it more openly, but they're not open to talk about it in public, or even mention it to close family that I've got this drinking problem. So I think it's just about the confidence. They've not got confidence to seek help, and when they do want help, it's a bit too late, because then they've developed, like you were saying earlier, women that drink alcohol, they're obviously getting breast cancer, and it starts spreading a lot more than if somebody that doesn't drink.
Interesting. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate your views.
No problem. You've got a very strong fan base in Manchester, and we all get together and watch your show every Thursday. So thank you so much for the work that you do to inspire young entrepreneurs, people in the community, and please continue to do exactly that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So, it's not a problem that's just in the Sikh community. It exists in the Muslim community, and what Sarah's view was that people are moving away from religion, which of course, as a especially as an Amritdhari Sikh, we don't partake in alcohol or meat. Islam strictly forbids alcohol, and large parts of Hinduism is non-practicing of alcohol. So, is it a general move away from our cultural base, whereby we don't drink alcohol, or is it something deeper? Of course, large parts of the Sikh community in India have got a huge problem with alcohol and drugs right now, sweeping the Punjab. So that's mirrored by what's going on in this country. I'm not 100% sure in terms of what the drug issues are within our community. And if anybody's watching that knows that information, that works within drugs and alcohol units in any capacity as a counsellor, would love to hear from you as to what your views are, the work that you're doing. I'd love to share that with you. And so, what can be done? Because large amounts of alcohol consumed is very, very, bad for health. But a lot of people, an awful lot of people, enjoy it very nicely, and there's no harm done. But about 10% of our community, and particularly our men, are having these issues. So, you're welcome to share your views with me. I shall continue to impart my limited knowledge and my journey in terms of what is going on in our own community, according to me. So we go to weddings, and men sit separately to women on tables generally, and that then is obviously something that's conducive to sitting around a table with 10, 12 of us drinking copious amounts of alcohol. One of the things that I would like to talk about is that it's very difficult for a man to be a social drinker in our community. So when I say social, a lot of our ladies partake in drinking alcohol. They'll have one or two drinks, and that's the end of the matter. But that doesn't seem to be the same for men. Men don't seem to be able to be social drinkers where they can have one or two. There seems to be no limit to the amount of alcohol that's consumed, especially at our functions and when we have gatherings, even at home. So it starts, and until the function is finished, drinking doesn't stop. So is there something that we can do in terms of functions? Can they be different? Because I don't think it's a religion-based thing for the Sikh community, although as Sarah's saying that Islam strictly forbids it. I think it's much more of a cultural thing for us. And for the Muslim community, it may be a cultural thing in this country, because obviously, you're not exclusively mixing with other men that are not drinking, you're mixing with other people that are drinking, and that is obviously then encouraged, and you see you're opened up to different parts of society that does consume alcohol. So on the whole, for the young people of our community, alcohol consumption is going down. So all the studies show that there is a downward trend. But having said that, we've got a huge inflow of especially foreign students that don't drink. So the Chinese community by and large don't drink. Everybody from the Islamic religion obviously doesn't drink alcohol. So they could be skewing the figures in terms of what the readings are coming down, where they're saying that young people don't drink as much as they used to. But that could be purely that we've got an influx of those people that don't partake in alcohol, and that is skewing the figures, because from our own community, all I see is that the consumption of alcohol is increasing. People are getting younger, more women are drinking, and they're drinking more and more on a regular basis. So all of those are causing us untold damage in terms of the fabric of our society and the way our communities are structured and the way we actually conduct ourselves. So as Sarah was saying, that domestic violence is up, and then therefore causes the divorce rates go up. And of course, one of the biggest problems in this country is male suicide. About 100 men, particularly young men, commit suicide every single week in this country. It's a shameful figure that often is swept under the carpet, and people don't talk about it very often. And the interesting thing about the suicide rates in this country is that about 70% of all suicides involve alcohol or drugs. And particularly, obviously, the consumption of too much alcohol or too much drugs. So, if we could put a handle on that problem of alcohol consumption, we could probably reduce significantly the loss of life of particularly men, particularly young men in this country. That is a total waste. So, I imagine what happens is that they get themselves an issue, try and treat it with alcohol, which is a depressant in its own right. And then, of course, the unfortunate ultimate thing happens where they end up taking their own life, which is, the saddest thing that can ever happen. It devastates families, and you're often left asking questions as to why this happened. And then, of course, the other big question is, what could we have done about it? And, had we removed alcohol and drugs from that particular individual, perhaps they would still be here today, because there's nothing bigger waste than a premature death that's of somebody that hasn't fulfilled their lives. I've unfortunately witnessed two of my personal friends in their mid-40s so lose their lives and their battle to alcohol. One of them was told about a year before he lost his life that it was either alcohol or he would no longer be alive, that he'd gotten himself to that point where this was what's going on. And so we did not expect him to actually just give up, which is what he did. And it's a big problem. And, I don't know what we could have done about it, but unfortunately, at the age of around about 45, we lost him. Another one of my friends, very, very successful businessman, Lester, same kind of thing, was given an amount of time to live. And I think, he'd gone past the point of no return. A lot of illnesses pursued, lost a lot of weight, and, lost his battle for life in an awful way, and, left a young family. And that's the other thing, isn't it? That is devastating for those that are left behind. Children are young, brothers, sisters, and, I've had conversations with people whereby, a brother has lost his life, but the father and the brothers that are left are still consuming copious amounts of alcohol. So, what is it? Is it something that we don't want to talk about because, somebody outside of our community, what I would say, not of the Sikh background, had the courage to ring up and tell us about what they think is going on right now. So do we not want to discuss it? Because then we can just shut this thing down and we can carry on losing lives and we can carry on suffering. So because, it clearly demonstrates to me that, there's no queue of people phoning up to say this is a problem. But I see that problem every single day of the week. And so do the hospitals, and so do the cancer wards, and so do the police forces, where they're called out for domestic violence that's being conducted against our, particularly against our women. Obviously, domestic violence works both ways. There are a minority of cases where women are subjecting their partners or their male counterparts to domestic violence, but it's a rare thing. So most of the time it's the other way around. So do we not want to discuss this? Is there nobody out there that wants to talk about this? Because then, is it not an issue for us? Because I can tell you it is an issue, but it also seems that we want to do this privately. There's no answers to this in the privacy of hiding these things under the carpet. We're hiding mental illnesses in our community under the carpet. We're hiding alcoholism. We're hiding domestic violence. How long are we going to carry on doing that before the dam bursts and we actually see thousands and tens of thousands of cases of the Sikh community in particular, which is the community that is most heavily represented by this TV station, that just comes and starts talking about it? Yeah? When does that happen? So where are those 1.5 million people that viewed those two posts about alcohol and the journey of alcohol and not being a drinker anymore? So where are those people? Where are those men that have got a concern? Because you have a problem when people are telling you that you need to take a look at this. You've got a problem when you wake up in the morning thinking, good God, what did I do last night? So if you're not going to talk about it, it's not something that you can do alone. You can't deal with it. There's no shame in it, right? Because it's just a problem. And when you get rid of it, it's gone like that. But it would appear that, there's silence in the community and nobody wants to talk about it, right? So if you don't want to discuss it, we won't lay on programs like this. We won't give you the opportunity to talk to us, and we won't have any solution to any of these problems that we're going through right now. Because by closing our eyes and making like an ostrich and burying our head in the sand, that's not what presents solutions to us. So we're not going to have these solutions. We're not going to be able to deal with them. And if your brother, your father, your mother, your dad is drinking too much, you need to come out and tell us. You need to talk about this. And if they won't do it themselves, then you need to stand up and say, listen, this is what's going on in our household, and we want to do something about it. There's no shame involved in it. And if you don't talk about it with anybody, then we're never ever going to have a solution to this problem. So, we've got issues, and we want to bring you and highlight those issues. We're quite happy, to go marching for farmers that are on strike in India. That's great, but it doesn't affect us in this country. So that's not what's going on right now. So what does go on is the fact that we've got an epidemic of alcoholism, domestic violence, divorce, drug abuse going on in our own community, and it appears that we really don't want to discuss it. I don't know what the reason is for doing that, but only you know. So if you do not want to discuss these things, then that's fine. We won't bring them up again, and we'll talk about other things that do concern you and you do worry about. My fear is that you just don't have the courage to talk about it, that it's going on, and you just are afraid of what people will think if they know that you have a problem with alcohol. And the problem with that in itself is that there's no solution. This will never end, and your problem will get worse and worse and worse and worse. So I'm going to do something for you in the last half of the program, which is to actually say where you should be. So you've got a problem, and I know you've got a problem, and your family knows you've got a problem. So you can either deny it or you can admit it. But until you admit that you have a problem, there's no solution. So you can carry on wasting time, money, and your health on this addiction that you have. And you can carry on wasting potential, and you can rest assured that life will only get worse. So the first step that you should take is to actually admit that you have a problem, and admit it in your own household, admit it to your significant other, admit it to your children. So then you can move forward and actually find a solution for it. You can find a solution by going to Alcoholics Anonymous. You can find a solution of various helplines. You can find a solution by reading about it. Or you can find a solution by discussing it. Now, we've had a situation whereby we had a gentleman who contacted me that his father was drinking so much and wouldn't watch anything on YouTube or on TV about alcohol, wouldn't let the family discuss it, and wouldn't talk about it, left the room when the subject was brought up. So I suggested that what they do is an intervention as a family. So if you are the victim of somebody that is abusing alcohol, what I suggest you do is have a conversation with them. If they're still in denial, have a conversation with your greater family and have an intervention with your immediate family or your greater family, however you live. That intervention, there should be somebody there that makes that person sit down and listen, that they do not walk out of that room, and tell them, prepare statements as to what effect their alcohol abuse is having on you and your family. And once they are made aware, give them the opportunity to address you and what they feel and what they think that you want to do. Now, everybody's an adult, so if that fails and they don't want to do anything about it, well, then you've got to start moving and thinking about whether that person should be living with you in your household, whether it is you as a family that needs to move out or whether it is they that need to move out. Because, we all have to take responsibility for where we are. You can only play the victim for so long until it gets to the point where something's going to have to give. So if your alcoholic husband, brother, daughter, son, wife isn't willing to listen to you, then there's outside help. Obviously, there's counselling. As I said, there's Alcoholics Anonymous. There's some help available from the Gurdwaras, although most of the time we brush that under the carpet. And, especially the males in our community, it often gets laughed off because nobody wants to address that problem. Or very often the person that you want to talk to is also abuser of alcohol, and so they don't want to say anything. So my own journey tells me that those that were the most in terms of put pressure on to drink, those that were wanted to have a joke at my expense, were the people that were having issues with alcohol in the first place. So that will tell you the size of the problem. There's no wedding that I go to where somebody doesn't come up to me and say, hey, listen, how did you sort this out? Because I've got a real problem. And unfortunately, it's usually after consuming copious amounts of alcohol, in which case it's pointless talking to these people. So that's my guide for you if you have a family member or if you yourself are suffering from this. I've got a Facebook group called Alcohol Free Living. You're quite welcome to come and join that. You're quite welcome to contact me on social media. I'll help you in confidence and for free. There's no charges for this. It's something that I want to provide for the community, show a real gateway to having a life that's much happier and much better than the one you got right now. Because there's nothing clever, there's nothing amazing about having an issue with alcohol or drugs. Because what often happens is that you're the life and soul of the party, but when you get back home, it's not the same thing. And then the next day, because alcohol is a depressant, you are going to feel very, very, very bad. As my caller said this morning, that, Saturday night out is fantastic. Sunday morning is a time for depression and real lows, because it is a depressant and that's what it will do to you. And then the problem is that you end up drinking more to make yourself better, and that vicious circle just continues forever and a day. And that's the problem with it. It's how you get out of that. So the first step is admission of the fact that you have a problem, and the second thing is a solution. And solutions vary for various people. If you are dependent on alcohol, that in the first thing in the morning you think about and do is drink alcohol, you really need to seek medical advice. And if you think your problem is serious enough that there will be a danger to your health if you stop drinking, then you need to seek medical advice. Go to your doctor, tell him or her what your problem is, how much you're drinking, be honest about it. Keep a drink diary. That diary should have the amount of alcohol that you drink, in an honest fashion and tell them what you're drinking, and they will then be able to prescribe you any medication that you may need to actually wean you off alcohol, because it is a medical problem at a certain point. So the other thing that will happen is that you will be deficient in nutrients, and so you need to start thinking about taking some supplements once you stop. Lots of water. And the other thing is that alcohol contains an awful lot of sugar, and so you will have a deficiency in that aspect of your life. The idea is that we want to give up alcohol, not necessarily sugar at this point. So take one bottle at a time. So if you suddenly develop a huge sweet tooth, doesn't matter. Let that go. Drink a lot of water. The other thing, of course, is exercise. Because what happens often is that if we are consuming too much alcohol, we're not exercising, we're not fit, we're probably overweight, our diet is probably poor, and so is our personal hygiene. So these are the things that you need to be looking at. Write down what it is that you need to have a look at, and write down what it is that you can be doing about this. So in terms of where we are from a personal point of view, it appears that the community doesn't want to talk about this issue, and if you certainly don't want to talk about it on this show. So this will be the last program that I'll ever do on this subject, which is a real shame, because I know and there's a need for this, and there's a huge cry out for help from those people that are suffering, and especially their families. But it appears that the fact that other people may know you have a problem is a bigger issue to you than the actual problem itself. And then you can't address anything. So now you're paralyzed, and you're in this vortex of a vicious circle of going round and round in a issue that nobody wants to resolve. Your family doesn't seem to want to resolve it. You don't want to resolve it. Our community doesn't want to resolve it, because it's community-wide. Maybe the problem is so big that so many people are infected with it that we don't want to deal with it. The majority of you have got issues. So I know in the Punjab, it's a huge problem for our young men, where 1 in 4 is dependent on drugs and alcohol to survive. And certainly, the numbers are that 50-50 of people that cannot live through their day without consuming drugs or alcohol. It's wasting potential in our community. It's wasting potential. So the problem with that is that we're not then living the life that we could live in the way that we could live it. We're not contributing to society, we're not contributing to our family, and we're sucking the life out of our community and our family, because you cannot work, you cannot function properly whilst under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So, but like I said, from the lack of phone calls into the program about this, it's a real shame that I will not be discussing this matter any further. We were hoping that this would open up a real topic for ourselves, and we would be able to discuss this on a much wider level, perhaps have a panel of people that could help us. But it appears that's not the case. So I know you're watching at home and you're thinking, maybe I should phone up and ask. Well, the opportunity will disappear in about 10 minutes, and that's fine by me. So these issues are burning issues in our community that will only get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as I said, the dam will break one day, and we will be able to have a conversation, an adult conversation about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and when we're going to deal with it. Because all you're doing by not discussing it is pushing the inevitable down the road. It's kicking the can down the road that we're not going to deal with this today, that we will deal with it at some other point in the future. The problem with that is that some other point in the future, your problem will have multiplied many times over. You will have health issues, you will have financial issues, and you will have relationship issues. You may have lost your home by then, you may have lost your job, you may have lost your business. It's too late. It's far, far too late. It's far harder to recover that situation at that point than it will ever be whilst you are in control of your faculties, whilst you still have your business, you still have your family, you still have a roof over your head, you still have money to your name. Because believe me, this thing will take everything. It's like a Venus flytrap. And what happens is it gradually pulls you in until there's nothing left of you, there's nothing left of your family, there's nothing left of your finances. That's where it's trying to take you, down this bottomless pit that will consume you, it will consume your family, and it will certainly define you. Personally, I've been to too many funerals, right? I've been to too many funerals of friends that have lost their life prematurely. And there are many, many more who are, lost and still alive. They have no family left, they have no finances left, they have nothing, they have no community left. So the community that you are afraid will judge you now is the same community that will be laughing at you when you're homeless. It's the same community that will be talking about you and your family if you lose your life. So it's the same community that would turn very quickly on you and be saying, what a stupid person, why didn't he or she seek some help? So I'm not the master of this, and I don't have the monopoly on helping anybody, but I am somebody that's willing to put his head above the parapet and talk about a problem that I know is huge and nobody wants to discuss it. So 3.5 years in, where am I with everything? I certainly wouldn't have this TV show. I certainly wouldn't have the health that I have today. I wouldn't have the support of my family that I have today. And I wouldn't have a lot of the businesses and a lot of the benefits that I have today of not being dependent on alcohol. So, but it is your prerogative not to take part, and it's your prerogative not to talk about this problem. I wish you all the best, but trying to deal with it on your own is not going to solve your problems. And and that's a shame, because especially as men, we don't want to discuss things. We're supposed to be all strong, and we're all supposed to be be able to deal with things, but we can't, and it clearly shows that we're not dealing with these problems. But as I said, nobody wants to come forward, nobody wants to discuss this, as we won't be doing it again. That was the opportunity today to have a conversation, but that's fine. I wish you all the best, and I wish that at some point in your life you work up the courage to talk to somebody about it. Look near and dear, counsellors, Alcoholics Anonymous, your doctor, your friends, your family. Unfortunately, if you are a drinker and most of your friends drink, there's no encouragement coming from there. There's nothing coming. Nobody in that group of people is going to say to you, you should drink less or you shouldn't drink at all, because you're part of a club at the end of the day, and that's what happens. And these clubs inevitably continue to do and encourage you to do so. So it's the end of a show. Next week I will have a guest, and we will be discussing various issues again, hopefully within our community. But we won't be discussing alcohol. As I said, that was an opportunity that we had to discuss this issue and to bring it out into the open, but we want to leave it in the dark, and that's your prerogative. So I'm happy with that. So thank you very much for watching the Kam Johal Show today, and I will see you next week for another action-packed show where we'll be discussing the journey of one of our amazing entrepreneurs, and we're discussing some issues that are facing ourselves and the country as a whole. We've obviously got queues around garages with petrol not being delivered, which is an interesting thing for a first world country to see. Apparently we're now short of tanker drivers, and so those people that were saying the foreigners are taking all our jobs, I wish they'd drive tankers and deliver petrol to our petrol stations so we wouldn't have to queue. This particular presenter drives an electric car, so I don't have those issues. So I bid you a good night, and stay safe, and I will see you again next week on the Kam Johal Show for another episode, and hopefully we'll get more participation from the audience, and we will actually address some issues that you do care and want to do. So I bid you good night for tonight. Thank you for watching. Good night.